So welcome everyone to our presentation, the first presentation in the Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia chapter of the ACRL, what the Professional Development Committee of the chapter is terming our Professional Development Video Series. These are kind of intended as slightly more informal opportunities for members of the chapter and others to share insights, experiences that may be valuable to our colleagues in a slightly more informal, relaxed session setting than say a conference presentation, to allow for just a little more flexibility, reactionary time, that sort of thing. This presentation is being recorded, as these videos will be publicly available. So if you have any issues with being recorded, or maybe say things in chat you may not wish to be recorded, please be aware of that as a factor in this. And with that said, welcome again to the first series. This video is working from home with your partner or children, and I will introduce our first presenter, Martin Dunlap, the engineering librarian at West Virginia University, and we'll give him the floor. Note, if you have any questions, we will have questions at the end. I advise you to message those questions to Nick Gardner privately, so he can kind of be our moderator and just filter the question, not filter, but just handle the questions a little bit to make things go a little smoother. With that, Martin, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that introduction. I am, as you said, as Rocco said, Martin Dunlap. I work at West Virginia University, and engineering librarian there out at the Evansdale Library, if you know where that is. So I just wanted to, let you see what I look like, sort of put a name with a face here before I go into my PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to go with that. And, if you have any questions, you can, put them in the chat, or as Rocco said, send them over to Nick. But we'll, try to answer the questions as best we can. So let me switch over. And if someone could just give me a thumbs up that they can still hear me and they can see my screen, that would be great. Okay, thank you so much. So working together at home, Kelly and I, we are just people there who, there's just us. We don't have any kids, so that's the next presentation. I just wanted to go through a few things, maybe 9 or 10 things. Just, you probably know this information, but maybe you'll catch get another idea a little bit from what I have to say. All right, so I'm just going to talk about these are the things that I want to talk about, and I always like to include this slide just in case something goes wrong. I can always sort of maybe get back to this slide and continue to work. So this is just pictures of us and a look at where we work. We are very lucky. We have 2 separate workspaces. Kelly has an office and I have an office that is in a different part of the house. So I tend to do a fair amount of AV stuff. So I kind of need more space to work on video and audio and things like that. So I tend to have more junk around, and you can see hers is in a very nice, very well constructed area, and well, mine isn't. But again, no children, but we do schedule time for the cats. We have 3 of them. That's Dewey, is the orange cat. And then Chloe is the black cat, and then the tuxedo is Archie. So make certain that you schedule time for your cats and that you give your cats a daily routine, but don't over supervise them. So number 1, let's talk about some things that can make your life better. Scheduling your workspaces. If you only have 1 workspace, again, we're very lucky we have 2, but if you have 1, you're going to have to schedule it. There's really no other way around it. This is how you're going to keep things happy by actually scheduling it. You may, you don't have to set up something as crazy as the thing I have on the screen, but it would really help out if, if you got together and said, hey, tomorrow I need the room, or, 1:30, after that it's yours, or something like that. So make certain that you schedule the workspace. Workspaces are for work, okay? So if you are going to be doing your work on a laptop in the living room, I would encourage you not to do that. Find a space and use that for work. And keep work during work, right? So keep an 8 to 5 or an 8 to 4, whatever that you normally did. Keep those workspaces and work times. Keep to work schedules and habits. So I get up in the morning, brush my teeth, all that kind of stuff, do the hair, shower, all of that stuff. I eat a couple of slices of homemade bread with peanut butter on it, and then I go to work, okay? So I've set up a work schedule, okay? Whatever you did when you actually worked, try to keep as close to that as possible. And keep discussions about work at work during work times. Now, both of us, we work at the same place. So sometimes, it happens that we talk about work that are outside of work hours, but try to work out that you're going to talk about work only during work hours. And this one right here is really important. Okay, so I talked about, my ritual in the morning, and I have just the same kind of ritual at the end of the day. When you're done with work, shut down your computer, turn it off, close it. If it's a laptop, close the laptop, and then go and do something else. Don't let work overtake your life. Okay, so have a ritual to start work and a ritual to end work. Humans love ritual. And so the more we're in ritual, the better we are. But also schedule some time to do something on your own. Read a book on your own, learn to crochet. I'm working on a little project now where I have to, I'm going to try to take some pictures of a stuffed animal that has a mask on it. So kind of like ALA has those read posters, I'm trying to recreate like a wear a mask poster with a stuffed animal on it. So I've been trying to work on that. So, schedule some alone time and respect that your partner also requires alone time. But schedule things to do together, right? We cook together. We do that kind of stuff. Make certain that you schedule that time. Don't just leave it to chance that you're going to do something or whatever. Just make certain that you talk about it to your partner. Hey, let's get crabs tonight, or whatever. Let's cook a big souffle. Let's see if we can finally conquer a souffle. Whatever. It doesn't have to be food, but food is kind of important right about now. So make certain that you schedule to do things together as well. And this is really all of them combined into one. Communicate. You've got to communicate with your partner, with your cats, with anybody else in the house. You've got to communicate and make certain that everybody is on the same page. Don't, write something and think that the other person, is going to get it. Make certain that you communicate well, not just communicate. And then I thought of this one a little bit earlier, so it's not really on my list, but, exercise as best you can. We, have kind of an obstacle course in our house, and we walk around to get exercise. Right about now, we can all need it. We all use it. So try to exercise as best you can, okay? And if you can, schedule it to do so. So eat lunch, walk for a little while. Eat dinner, walk for a little while. Make certain that you work exercise into your daily routine, okay? And then I have a few things here. If you're at WVU, if you have questions, you know, your partner is probably not a healthcare professional, a mental health care professional. So there are some places out there. I put a couple of them on here. WVU has some help. And then I looked up the National Mental Health Institute there. They have a text line that you can text and call to be able to talk to a trained counselor. So take advantage of these resources if you need to. And then I have some resources here. We'll make certain that you guys get all of these PowerPoints and PDFs. So we'll make certain that we get them to you. Okay, and so questions are going to be in a couple of minutes, but I'm gonna turn this over to Rocco, and he is going to take us through the second half of our afternoon.
All right, thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. I'm Rocco Cremonese. You heard my velvet tones at the beginning of this presentation too. Let me get my screen share set up very quickly, and then we will move on to part 2. And all right, there we go. Can someone give me a thumbs up if they see the Working Together at Home Part 2 children? As I've already selected the wrong. Awesome. Thank you all. And so, Working Together at Home Part 2 children. So again, I'm Rocco Cremonese. I'm also the chair of this professional development committee. So if you have any questions about this series or this presentation, a complaint, something that came off wrong, please let me know. I'll be happy to communicate, try and rectify it. So Working Together at Home Part 2 children. So my credentials. Anyone who's a parent knows there's not really a course you take, you just kind of become a parent. And maybe you're a good parent, maybe you're a bad parent, you're probably a decent parent, I don't know. But as far as my credentials for this, so I live with 3 children. My son Killian, age 6, he just graduated kindergarten. My son Kieran, age 5, he's preschooler. And my daughter Saoirse, she's a 1.5, and I put the world on that slide because she is educated by the world right now. Anything she sees goes in her mouth. If there's something neat, she's going to touch it and try to manipulate it. You get the idea. And fortunately, I also live with my wife at age 32. I don't know why I put her age. Clara, who also works in academics, also works from home. She is an adjunct professor. So before we begin, first, the pep talk. And those of you with children have hopefully have some variation of this that you use with yourself. But if not, as far as working from home with your kids, probably being, schooled at home in this crazy situation we find ourselves in from a pandemic or other, the pep talk. And that is, don't be a perfect parent, just be a parent. You will make mistakes with yourself, with your children. Forgive yourself, learn from them, move on. I can speak from personal experience. In the work experience, you will screw up. Your kids will screw up. Your kids will screw up. You will screw your kids up sometimes. Hopefully this presentation helps you reduce or mitigate those screw ups, but forgive yourself. This is a very, as we all know, unusual situation we find ourselves in. So to review part 1, all the advice Martin gave is fantastic and can also be applied to working with children, with a few exceptions naturally that the child experience may change, and I kind of asterisk those. Work-life separation, that can be a little more difficult. You should still strive for it, but of course the more people you throw into a mix, the more schedule juggling occurs. You have to revise. Keep work at work, absolutely. 100% I agree. Wherever you can, keep work at work, keep your designated workspace. Keep in mind your designated workspace may be invaded, or especially with children, you may need to modify your environment. More on that later. You see other details here, but you'll also note that I super emphasize communicate, because everything starts with communication with your partner or spouse, if you have one. If you have child support, like a daycare or a sitter or a nanny, you need to, a grandmother, you need to communicate with them. And of course, this is critically important. Give your kids a daily routine. It's so important. I say it 4 times. Remember, children, even if they may not seem like they thrive on structure or have trouble fitting into a structure, they thrive on structure. Think of, now I'm putting on my former high school teacher, elementary and high school substitute teacher hat. Children need that structure. They crave that structure. Is it going to go 100% perfectly? No, it will not. But wherever you can, try and give them some structure and routine. And I say that, and now I'm going to violate everything I said with the next slide. So you've been warned. So what we had at home, just a sample daily routine, you know, we would have the first hour trying to get our children ready for the day, and school and lessons would be the first 2 hours. We were homeschooling remotely because all the schools were shut down. Then, you know, there were breaks, play breaks, lunch, and then I put additional school this would apply if you have older children, of course, because they will probably have a 6 or 7 hour day. In my case, my school age children were just preschool and kindergarten, so they were only half the day. But that time was built in as a buffer in case they needed more time for school and study. Now, as for you, the worker, whether yourself or in coordination with a partner or spouse or other or childcare, consider any opportunity you can find for uninterrupted work time. If your children take naps, try and schedule your workday where those times you really need to lock down and dial in maybe fall most of the time when your toddler naps. And I know naps are unpredictable, but this goes back to that routine. If your children have a favorite TV show, cheat, especially if the school environment for your children is asynchronous and you know you really need that extra half an hour to dial in and focus on your emails every day or what have you, then, you know, don't be afraid to deviate from the normal school schedule if, again, your children's schooling is asynchronous. Be flexible. What we did with my wife and I with our kids, we kind of favored a flexible approach. We tried to stick to the schedule on the left, but if the children slept in, awesome. They're sleeping in, we're running downstairs, we're working on our email, we're grading papers, doing everything we can that we know demands more of our attention at work while they're sleeping. Other scheduling tips: be ready to juggle your schedule, be super flexible, coordinate coverage whenever you can. My example for flexibility is virtual reference. The best example I can give is when I was on the virtual reference desk. I'm not suggesting step away, and this is where that whole work life, you know, your work is your work and your life is your life, gets terribly skewed when you have children. But in my case, what I did is I would crank my virtual reference chat up to 300% volume so I could hear it anywhere in the house. And if I was to be less engaged, then I could be nearby supervising my child or helping him with his reading. They read in kindergarten now, it's crazy. Helping him with his reading because he struggles with his reading. And then if I heard that chat ding, then I was out like a flash to jumping over chairs, couches, toys, whatever was in my way to get to that chat and answer the chat. That's what I mean though, as far as like the items that demand your full attention and not. You really kind of need to structure your day. Again, the older your children get, the easier this will be. But if your children are less self-sufficient, especially through no fault of their own, they're just younger, then you'll really need to adapt that into your play. And last and most important, develop a habit. This falls into communication. Double check your schedule with your spouse. If your kids are in schooling and they're getting email every day about their asynchronous activities, double check it in the morning. You will have stuff sneak up on you, like a Zoom meeting with their teacher. We had tons of those that snuck up on us, or if your spouse or partner has a business meeting and is also working from home, or a synchronous lecture. With that said, those were the scheduling considerations. Now I'm going to talk really briefly about environmental considerations. In this case, I'm talking about if you have really small children, you will need, number one, God bless you. Number two, you will need a way to contain them, not in like a inhumane way, But those of us with small children will know, you will probably want a playpen, but you'll probably need to expand into a play area. What I'm talking about here is, I mentioned my toddler. My wife and I jokingly referred to her as the feral child through this experience, because while we were helping our other children with school and also working, she was allowed to roam. Not unsupervised, let me stress. There were always eyes on her. Do not leave a small child unsupervised. But we had to really restructure our workplace to keep an eye on all of our children. So, for example, I talked about sight lines. Make sure you have clear lines of sight to all your children. And this actually has a pedagogical focus as well. If you have trouble keeping your children or students, try it with your students. If you're teaching a BI or library instruction session, they'll love it. Proximity is a great way to keep people on task without actually having to enforce the rules. So if your children are aware of the rules, and they will attempt to break the rules when you're not around, not maliciously, it's just what kids do, testing limits, just having your proximity there can be a really big thing that can assist people in staying on task. Like I said, try it in your BIs, especially if you have a student who is clearly not working on their EBSCOhost or whatever you want them to be working on, and is instead checking your email. Just stand next to them. Don't even threaten them or anything. Watch them get uncomfortable and switch back to EBSCOhost. It's really kind of fun to do. The same thing works with children. Structuring the kids' workspace, try to keep it organized. As far as I mentioned before, safe roaming room, keep in mind your child's temperament and your work situation. In my case, for Saoirse, my youngest, the playpen was great when I was working, except for meetings. I needed a bigger play space for meetings because otherwise she would see me outside the playpen in my desk and start screaming and crying. And so you obviously can't schedule every meeting around nap time with your coworkers, colleagues. That was when we entered the free roaming space, where they kind of had like a 20-foot area around my computer desk that she could roam and do toddler things. And I was there to protect her if needed. This is super important. Keep a bag of tricks handy. You will want to employ every life hack you can think of. And it may clash with your usual parenting style. So I'm not asking you to remove the norms you have as a parent. Just keep every bag of tricks you have. We used fun breaks if our kids were getting bogged down with schoolwork. I used bribery a lot if I had a meeting or desperately needed my children to be contained, delicious snack, new toy. And extra educational activities. And these would come in, say I still wanted my children to be getting some kind of educational experience at school, but because of a huge work conflict, I could not spend time reading with my child at that time. Well, there were virtual storybooks. We did a lot of science experiments. Keep in mind, science experiments have to be hands-on, so you may need to coordinate with your spouse or partner, but those are great things for small children. And we had art, kinetic sand, math games. Okay, so online meeting considerations with children. You all probably, this is kind of a review. Mute is your friend. If you have children, even if you're not used to being muted during a meeting, mute your microphone. You will hear things. Your child will shriek from the bathroom that they need you to wipe their butt. Wow, that is the most informal thing I've said in a presentation. You do not want that stuff on your microphone. So get in the habit of muting your microphone. Stay cool. Anticipate interruptions. In my meetings, I treated interruptions, I would just say, and not in an obnoxious way, I'd say, hey, my children are roaming in the area, so you may see me have to stop for a moment to rescue my child from going up the steps or something. Treat it the way you would an in-person meeting at your library. If you knew a student or a faculty member might be coming to see you, but you weren't sure when, just try and be casual. Other online meeting, try not to be ashamed. This is where it's tough with that whole non-work balance, but don't be ashamed of your family. This is, like I said, a super unusual situation. And remember, you're a human, you're dealing with humans. We're all fallible. Your coworkers and your boss were kids once, or possibly have kids. They will probably understand. Just know that you will have to take steps to mitigate and minimize these distractions. But when they happen, I would laugh at them, not laugh at my coworkers, but just roll with the punches. There will be parenthood is or even just rearing children is wild and crazy. So this will bleed into your work. As far as challenges, okay, so you had what I like to call anticipated challenges. You can see some examples there. Those you can plan around. Just be aware you'll have unanticipated challenges. And then these are where some of the things we talked about, kids refusing to do work, that's when you dip into your bag of tricks or your rain checks. In the case of rain checks, that's where I dip into my other educational activities. Okay, I get it. You're frustrated with your reading. You don't want to focus on this now, and I can't help you. Here's an ebook to watch instead until I can help later in the day, that sort of thing. And with that, you'll also get these slides, but just further reading. The first two are just other articles I found about working from home that may have other tips that may help you. The third is just a reminder that this is it's about workplace stress, depression, working from home with children. Find ways to self-care, okay? You need to take care of yourself. If you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your children. That's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever received, that you have to take care of yourself. And you may be thinking, no, I have to sacrifice this. I have to sacrifice this daily run for my children or something. Because find ways to exercise or do those things that help you self-care. Because if you're not a whole, healthy, good person, then how can you be a whole, healthy caregiver for your children? It just doesn't work. You'll eventually burn out. Right, so with that, we'll move on to questions. And Nick, let me stop screen sharing. Could be our moderator for our questions.
Okay, I think at this time, we were anticipating originally people might have questions throughout the presentation, but if anyone has a question, feel free to type them in the chat. Or Rocco, Martin, do you want people to actually unmute and discuss?
That's fine with me.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay, you heard it here first. If you want to ask a question, you can just unmute and ask a question.
I just have a comment. I wanted to say that the feral child, I have a 6-year-old son, and I kind of feel like with all of this work from home, he's turning feral. So I like that. I appreciate that.
We were all feral children once, right?
Some of us still are.
I didn't want to say it, but.
Yeah, I mean, kids are so resilient, and I'm not a child care expert, obviously, but, you'll be fine. And just, forgive yourself. This is the craziest of crazy situations in all of our careers, I bet. Probably top 5, if not the craziest, top 5 for all of us, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's a worldwide pandemic. Come on. I mean, forgive a little.
This is Mary from Beckley. How are you? Hey, Martin. I just want to mention I live by myself. There are no partners, no kids, no pets, no anything. And you would think that perhaps that would make my life a little easier, perhaps, or I would have to have fewer strategies. However, because I have no other influences on my time besides me, it's very hard for me to stick to a schedule and not let things bleed into other times just because I'll happen to look at something at 8 o'clock at night and it's like, oh, well, I can take care of this now. Well, eventually, if you do that all the time and you're not focusing on, as the other presenter said, taking care of yourself, things don't go so well. So, all these months in, I'm finally deciding, I have to compartmentalize and say, okay, this is your work time. This is when you do this. This is when you go outside and commune with nature for a little while. So even if you're by yourself, there's the challenges as well.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mary. I mean, it's difficult. I always say humans love ritual, and we have to stick to a schedule. It just helps our brains work better. So yeah, even if you're by yourself or you've got 20 people it doesn't change. You still have to try to stick to a schedule. And like I said, the ritual of going to work and the ritual of leaving work, I'm pretty good about that. I mean, go to work, do work during work time, go to lunchtime. And then when I'm done with work, I shut down the computer, make certain my workspace is clean. And then I go up and, watch murder shows. So, you got to have a ritual.
Okay, so we have a question in
Clara.
the chat. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
That's actually from Claire. Claire, did you just want to ask your question?
Yeah, I wasn't sure, so at first I put it in the chat. So I'm Claire from Pitt, and Rocco, thanks for your presentation. My kids are older now, but I'm kind of having some flashbacks of what it was like. But I'm wondering, do you have you had any interest from your kids, especially your older ones, in what you do for your job, or specific aspects of your job?
Yes, I mean, they've had interest in actually kind of the virtual reference, probably just because I'm always like, oh, it's like, hey guys, Daddy's helping someone right now, and they're like, oh, what do you mean? How are you helping them? And I'm like, they have a question, and as children, that's something else they can really easily relate to. Like, oh, I'm a child, I need help sometimes, so I have to leave Daddy be while he helps this person with their dissertation they're trying to find or whatever. That's been the main thing. Unfortunately, because so much of it is virtual, like, I mean, I can't explain cataloging or MARC records or content management systems to them yet. But yeah, they're usually pretty interested in what I have to do, and they're always interested in meetings. If you have video chat on meetings, you might as well just tell your boss, hey, you might see a head pop up on the screen, because that's happened a fair amount. And when that happens, I've told your mileage may vary on how much you can focus with a child on your lap. I'm just like, hey, you might, see Kieran make an appearance. He'll just sit there in my lap and watch. Obviously, if it was like a classified, like a personnel meeting, I wouldn't have my 5-year-old in my lap, but that sort of thing, that's where it's like, again, the human element. And hopefully, at Slippery Rock, we have an amazing president who reminded us we need to care for each other and take care of ourselves. So I kind of just interpreted that as like, oh, that's blanket permission to be, I mean, I'd work extra hours to make up for time I missed, but if I need to stop working for 2 hours to take care of this child, that's what I need to do, so, again, your mileage may vary, but.
Well, the same goes with cats. I just noticed that, Nick says that his dog loves virtual meetings. My cats love virtual meetings too. So, you're lucky that you haven't seen a big, orange tail, just come swiping through here. That's a pretty common thing. And like you said, you just have to roll with it. Try to keep your train of thought. Don't let the cat freaking out, make you lose what you're talking about. But absolutely, we're all human. Be human. You're allowed to be human.
Do you have any other questions, Nick? We can certainly continue questions, and we were taking it to end at 12:30, so I'm not trying to end us, but let me deliver my spiel, and then if other people want to discuss, stick around, we certainly
this time,
can.
I don't see that we have any other questions, so I guess this is our last call for them. Okay,
great. So thank you everyone so much for attending. You'll probably see an email, but if you note in chat, I'm going to send 3 hyperlinks your way, and then I'll do my plug for session 2. But these 3 hyperlinks, hopefully they're clickable. They're clickable on my screen because I'm the host. I hope they're clickable on yours, but I know Zoom has been playing with security settings for quite some time. So you'll also get this all via email. I will figure out how to do that, and you will get it via email. If you could, we have at the top a feedback form. If you could take just 2 minutes to fill that out, we would love that, because this is our very first session and we would desire your feedback. If you're interested in this series as it continues, we have a frequently asked questions section. That could just be if you want to know more about this series, or if you're interested in possibly making a submission and presenting. As you've seen, this is a kind of an informal thing. deliberately intended to be more informal than a conference presentation. So if you have an idea or something professional you really want to share, go for it. Consider that. And last, so we have our plug. So consider if you enjoyed this session, and you'll see promotional material for this, attending our next presentation. That's on July 17th. That's 4 roughly Fridays from now. That's going to be, I'll get the link in there too. Pedagogy in the Online Environment, presented by Miss Jessica Jordan, Slippery Rock University. I promise this won't be the Slippery Rock show for every video series. They say go with who you know. And Dr. Stephanie Panucci of Millersville University. If you want to register for that presentation now, you can. But if not, you'll see emails, listserv, notices, that sort of thing. And last but not least, this video will be publicly available in roughly 2 weeks. So if you found this insightful and want to share it with your colleagues or other librarians or library students, this video will be available on a YouTube channel, which we will get that information out to you. And that's all my spiel. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending.